can't believe I'm sharing this. Don't worry, it's not all bad. Yeah, that's the thing. Hi lovelies and welcome, it's Frontal here. So, if you've seen my previous postpartum video, you'll know that I shared some unexpected things that happened in postpartum, and I offered to share more. And since you have requested, I have to honour my word. So here are a few more postpartum things that go on, a little bit more TMI, and I feel like I had to discover them on my own. Okay, so I'm giving you a heads up. So yeah, hopefully it's helpful for you. So hemorrhoids are a thing. I don't know if you know what hemorrhoids are. I definitely did not, or I just had no idea that it was in association with postpartum. But of course, with all the pressure and the intensity of giving birth, it is very much a possibility that your southern regions will experience some hemorrhoids. And I didn't even realize I had it until I felt quite uncomfortable transitioning out of my postpartum underwear into more of my normal underwear. And granted, I had it quite mild, so it kind of went undetected. But when I started to research it, I was like, oh gosh, this is a whole thing. So I'm giving you a heads up that if you do feel any discomfort there, then don't overlook it. It's not something that you have to live with, and it's not a discomfort that you should just accept. There are creams out there that you can use. There are exercises that you can do to ease the discomfort. For me, I found that it did subside over a few weeks as everything just started to heal. And I know I've given a very cryptic description of what it is, but don't worry, Google will give you a very accurate picture of what hemorrhoids actually are. But I just did not know it was a thing. It's a thing. So just look out for it, ladies. I also share a tip when it comes to choosing your underwear postpartum in my postpartum hospital bag video. So do check that one out and look out for that tip just to make sure you're a bit more comfortable in that area, especially if you do have any hemorrhoids. And since we're talking about things down there, yeah, it definitely does look a bit different, but it's not all bad. So I think in my head, I expected the worst, that everything would just be stretched and baggy and awful. But the good news is that no, it's not that dramatic. I do feel like things do look slightly different, and I think it's probably relative to how much tearing you have during birth. So tearing is very, very natural. It happens to many women, and it can happen to varying degrees, which will determine how much stitching that you need and how things heal and ultimately look down there after birth. For me, I was quite lucky that I went hard with the perineal massaging. So I managed to just have a slight skin tear, so like more of a 1-degree tear, and I had very, very minor stitching. So things don't look totally different, but they are slightly different. And I think it's just good to know that things are going to look a bit different. But the good thing is that I would say it doesn't feel crazy different, or not in a bad way anyway. I think I was worried that I wouldn't be as sensitive or that my intimacy wouldn't be the same. But actually, I've been pleasantly surprised that things actually feel a bit better. I would say from about 6 weeks postpartum, when my baby started eating solids, and so was taking in a little bit less milk and my hormones started to regulate, so I had a normal cycle again, I've definitely found that everything down there actually feels a lot better than it did pre having a baby. I feel like I'm a lot less tight and dry, just generally a bit more receptive. Things have felt more comfortable than they did, particularly in the context of intimacy. So that's a good thing to look forward to. So even if you do look a bit different, it's okay. You'll still work and function the way you're supposed to. Let's talk breasts. So this is more applicable if you are breastfeeding, of course. So for a bit of context, I breastfed my first baby for 1 year and 3 months. And my second baby, I have been breastfeeding for 1 year and about 4 months. And I'm gradually weaning her and coming to the end of that journey. So I think it's fair to say that they have done a lot of work. And as much as I love to have a positive take on most things, yeah, I can't lie, they're just not the same. I found that after breastfeeding both of my daughters, just in general, I feel like they haven't completely shrunk, but they have lost a lot of luster, is what I would say. So they definitely sag more. They're definitely a lot softer than they used to be, not as perky or firm. And you know what? Ultimately, it's okay. I think it's incredible that I've been able to breastfeed two of my children for so long. And it's honestly been such an amazing and enjoyable and rewarding journey. So I know it's for the greater good, which is why I'm not bothered. But I just didn't expect them to look and feel so different. I will say, though, that they have been looking saggier after my second breastfeeding journey. I don't think it was First time postpartum, I don't think it was as drastic. I think that they were a shade of what they used to be pre-pregnancy. But I think just all of the stretching during pregnancy and compression, and that happens a lot also during breastfeeding at large, particularly in those early weeks when your milk is coming in and everything is super filled and engorged. I feel like that's when my breasts really got to stretch in. So it makes sense that now they're kind of looking a little bit more sad. So it makes sense that the elasticity is kind of worn on my skin there. But yeah, I just don't think I ever had a reference point or I ever realized what that might look like or feel like on me. For the most part, I'm not bothered. Obviously, they've done an incredible job of feeding two of my babies, and honestly, the breastfeeding journeys have been so enjoyable, and yeah, I've really loved it, and I think I'm really fortunate that I've been able to breastfeed them for that long. But it doesn't change the fact that they do look and feel different, and I'm most annoyed by having to constantly buy new underwear. So I think most people are probably aware that hair loss is a thing postpartum, but I think people may be less aware that actually it can hit at any point. So both with my first baby and my second baby, I thought that I had skipped the whole hair loss thing, and I was quite proud of myself until I was about 5 months, 6 months postpartum, and I was detangling my hair. And honestly, the amount of hair that was shed was shocking. And I think because I have afro hair, I have curly hair, and I wear my hair natural actually like 90% of the time, it was kind of disguised. I don't tend to manipulate my hair much either, but it definitely did hit me, and it happened, I think, a lot later than I was expecting it to. I thought it would be something that came quite early on postpartum, but this happened for me usually around the 5 6 month mark, so a bit later on. Another thing to note is that it can happen even later when you start weaning your baby. So I have a friend who actually experienced a second round of hair loss when she stopped feeding her 2 year old. And that's because ultimately it's because there's been another shift in hormones stopping breastfeeding. So it's just a heads up so that you're aware that hair loss can come at any point. And for me, I've been trying to wean my little ones super, super gradually, dropping one feed over a course of a few weeks, just so that my body has a chance to regulate, and hopefully I can skip some of the dramatic hair loss. I have had really bad lower back aches. So I mentioned this in my previous video, but I didn't expand on it. I found that if ever I went out for the day and I was doing a lot of walking or I was standing for a lot of time, just one of those active days where I was on my feet, the following day, my lower back would be super, super achy. And I hadn't realized that lower backache was coming from my body overcompensating for weakness in my core. So since I've been trying to make more of an effort to exercise and really strengthen my core, I have found that lower backache subside. I think it's actually quite an important one to share because sometimes I think there can be a bit of a mirage when it comes to postpartum fitness. And I think it's often taken from the lens of snapping back or losing weight or trying to look like a new version of yourself, all of which is perfectly fine and I have nothing wrong with. But for me, I have found that I've had to really focus on rehabilitation for my postpartum fitness. And I'm really glad I've been doing it because I actually feel better. And I'm finding that by strengthening my core, my lower back isn't aching as much. And I have had quite a few days where I've been busy and on my feet, and I've had nowhere near as much pain as I used to. This is also a problem that I was facing a good year postpartum. So it's not something that was just in the early weeks and months. It's something that I've been dealing with for a good year. And in all honesty, it hasn't changed until I started to work on trying to rehabilitate. So if you do feel anything, if you have any muscular aches and pains, do remember to speak to your GP, try and get a physio appointment so that you can get the right resources, advice, and exercises that are going to help to strengthen you up and get you feeling your best. Baby blues can creep up on you. So it's probably a well-known fact that baby blues can be a thing, but I think what I didn't expect about it was for the way it kind of crept up on me, and I felt like I was very aware of what the symptoms were, but in reality, I didn't realize I was experiencing it until I had a complete breakdown, and my husband and I were like, okay, we need to figure out what this is. Of course, with all the hormonal changes and with having such a big life change, it can be difficult to anticipate how you will feel going through it. And despite preparing in advance, it can still be something that looks and feels different in the moment. And for me, I found that my struggles with breastfeeding exacerbated everything. So I was feeling actually quite low and quite exhausted and drained, but I didn't have the tools to recognize what that was, to identify the feeling, let alone to communicate it to anyone and get the help I needed. So as much as possible, I recommend that you just try to be aware of what baby blues are. And if anything about how you feel doesn't feel great, then I'm here to assure you that it's okay to feel that way. Don't dismiss your feelings. I definitely repressed a lot of my feelings, thinking that maybe I was just being a bit ungrateful or it'll pass and it's just part of the process, which in some ways can be true, but obviously it wasn't helpful in me actually identifying that I had a problem that needed a bit more attention. So please be aware of what baby blues are, what postnatal depression is. Try and familiarize yourself with the symptoms. And when your health visitor asks you about how you feel, really take a moment to assess everything that you're going through. That's a safe space where you can talk. And even if you don't feel like sharing everything then and there, at least reflect on how you're feeling. And that might be the good starting point to identifying anything if you did have it. And to end on a slightly lighter note, I promise you everything is a phase. And this just isn't with postpartum. I found this to be true with newborn life in general. It can feel like certain things last forever, but when you look back in a few months, you'll realize actually certain periods were longer than others, some were more painful than others, but everything does pass. So if you're going through anything that feels uncomfortable, it's okay. You're going to get through it and you're going to feel better at the end of it. And fortunately, there are lots of tools and resources out there so that you can equip yourself to make any changes that you need, to get any support either medically or mentally or in any other way that you need to help you get through your postpartum and start feeling like yourself again, or at least a better version of yourself. So yeah, we got through it. Those are my TMI postpartum things that I did not see coming. I do hope this is helpful for you and just gives you a bit of insight into maybe some of the things that you might expect. If you found this helpful, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you can relate to anything, then drop a comment down below because it would be good to know that I'm not on my own. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.